Hello, and welcome to Contemporary Male. I'm Raylene S. Weaver, host of the show. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I enjoy working with individuals, couples, and teens. Men's issues is one of my specialty areas. As I was doing some of my graduate work, and also based on my personal life, I discovered something interesting. It seems that in American society, it's okay for girls to be tomboys, but not so much for boys to be tinagirls. In fact, we don't even have a name for it. I grew up a tomboy and loved it, and I've always admired boys' energy, creativity, and fearlessness. So today, we're going to hear from 3 different men about their thoughts on tinagirls and their views on masculinity. First, we're going to hear from Franco Benevento, who has background in being a personal coach and a fitness trainer and is now in the wine bar business. Next, we will hear from Steve Smith, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a friend and colleague of mine. And then we will hear from Ray Terry, my husband, a retired information technology manager with Hewlett-Packard Company. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back with our first guest. Franco, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Glad to have you here. So let's get started with our questions. Why do you think society seems to be okay with girls climbing trees and playing sports, but not so much with boys taking ballet or wanting to be secretaries?
Well, I think for a long time that we've had this idea that a man has to be stoic, can't really cry if he gets hurt, can't complain when he's in pain, should be hardworking. But I think just recently within this last generation that you find people that are really denying that and changing the way that they think about that. It's okay for men to be more feminine now, for the way that we dress and the culture as it is in our society, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. So at least we're crossing those bounds. I don't think people have to stick to the traditional roles of where they work either. I see women in the military and I see men that are flight attendants and nurses, and there's no longer a stigma about being that way.
Well, I think that you're probably very evolved and very, you have a high emotional intelligence quotient. But yeah, I think maybe like we were saying before, maybe in generations in the past, it was more, like you said, role driven, where men were supposed to be, the strong
Absolutely.
Providers and that kind of thing.
And I was definitely raised that way. And the way we had spoken, my father was really kind of rough and strict, and I came from a parent that was a military background. But I noticed that, you have to change with the times, and times are changing.
Okay, great. So then how do you define masculinity so that it works for you?
Well, being from that background and being raised that way, I think part of me is still very stoic and hard-driven and honorable, and I try not to show emotion because still, just in my own personal self, I think maybe because of the age that I am as well, that I still kind of cling on to that being strong and working hard and standing up for yourself. And I think that maybe it's changing recently, but for myself, that the way that I define masculinity is still in that way. And I still think I have like a tough demeanor, but when I come across, when I talk to people, I try to open up and be a little softer. So
you're kind of a work in progress then.
Exactly. I have to really catch myself because I feel like I have this like scowl or mean look on my face, and I don't want to go through life like that.
Okay. But, yeah. So then when you have kids, so if you had a son who just loved ballet and was just nuts about it and really enjoyed it, how would you respond to that?
I would be all for that. I mean, it's like I said, me personally growing up with a parent that just forced me to play one sport, and I had to play soccer, and I was allowed to run track and cross country because that would make me better or faster for soccer, let's say. But I really liked gymnastics, and I was never allowed to take gymnastics when I was a kid. So if my son really wanted to pursue it and I saw that he had an interest in it, I would give him, or daughter, whatever it may be, child,
right.
I would give them, my full support in that.
Interesting. Okay. How has being more emotionally open helped you in your life, or has it?
I think it's definitely made me softer and more understandable to people's plight. I realize that like everyone is going through life, and life is tough and painful sometimes and not always happy. And if you can give someone the benefit of the doubt until they can prove you wrong, then that's what I try to do. And I've been lucky to have met a lot of people in my life that have really helped me out and have been very nice, and I just can't see not being emotionally open for others, especially when there's so much pain that individuals have to suffer. So, yeah. And I think on a personal level, it makes me happier to when I'm with people and I can.
So you feel like you can express yourself and
much
you,
more
you
when
can
I
be
relate
more
to them and I can communicate with them on a personal level, definitely.
Okay, great. And what are some of the challenges that you faced choosing a career?
Well, the two careers I've had have been pretty, like, I would consider masculine. I've been a personal trainer for the last 15 years, or I've worked in some aspect at a bar, and in a part-time in construction. So those are all three jobs that are very, like, labor intensive, like, for the most part, very masculine.
Right.
And I feel that now going through school and college and doing communications, I feel that because I talk to people, that those jobs are actually really, they're completely separate. Like the bartender, you're really engaging someone on a one-to-one basis. In construction, you're not really talking. You're getting orders from someone, being told what to do,
right.
And then being a personal trainer, you are the one in charge, telling someone what to do. So there are three roles that are completely different, but I tend to like those.
So it's it sounds like you're kind of combining some of your some of his role or ethic into kind of some of the things that you're passionate about, or some of the things that you like to do.
Absolutely, I definitely am my parents' children. Like I said before, my dad was military, very strict, very stubborn, and then my mom went to Woodstock, was kind of a hippie, and
you got the balance,
and you have the balance.
The blend.
So I think that really shows in me. So definitely.
Okay, and then our final question. How do you feel about men in fields that are not necessarily viewed as male professions, such as nurses, hairstylists, professional dancers, flight attendants?
Well, I kind of spoke on that earlier. I think that it's in this day and age, and there's no longer a stigma behind it. So I think also with the way things are going, that if you can make a living in something you enjoy, then more power to you. It's really lucky to have a job, but if you can do something that you love, that is just phenomenal. So.
Excellent. Okay, great. All right, thank you so much,
Oh,
Franco. Really appreciate having you here today.
Again, thanks.
All right, folks, please stay with us, and we will be back in a few moments with our next guest. Steve, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. It's really good to have you here, a friend and a colleague, so I appreciate that.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, Raylene. I really appreciate being here.
Good, you're welcome. Okay, well, we've talked a little bit about this, but Steve, why do you think that society seems to be okay with girls climbing trees and playing sports, but not so much with boys taking ballet or wanting to be secretaries?
Well, I think, first of all, generally speaking, as humans, we tend to resist change, and we tend to fear things that are different. And so for a long time we've been conditioned to believe that boys are supposed to be a certain way, girls are supposed to be a certain way. And so when something is out of the ordinary, or people start doing things that are not the same, that people tend to get afraid of that, and will resist that in certain ways and try to stop it from happening, And so I think that's, in a general sense, what's going on.
So I just wonder, do you think maybe that is partially, there's some fear in there that if a boy likes to play with dolls or likes to cook, that maybe there's weakness there, or effeminate, or why do you think that there is resistance?
I think there is a fear there, a fear that the boy's not going to be grow up to be a man, or there's going to be some weakness. Just like you said, I think there is a conditioning within us that says, if a boy displays these qualities, he's weak, or he's not a full man, or those kinds, or not going to become a full man. And I think there's a lot of, there's still some of that going around, but I think it's getting better and better as a society, at least. And so I'm very hopeful that things are changing in the right direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think maybe what we're looking for is a little more integration, where it's okay to blend those roles a little bit, where you can have a boy that maybe likes to play football, but he's also great, doing art or doing other things. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
yes, and I think that's the ideal.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. So then, how do you define masculinity so that it works for you?
Well, as you were saying, I think that for all of us, we are here to develop our full selves, and part of that is developing our masculine tendencies, qualities, and then the other part is our feminine qualities. And for each human being, we are here to develop both of those. And so I think for everyone, the more you can integrate and balance those two, the more healthy you are as a human being. Now for me, masculinity means the idea of taking action, moving forward, getting results,
Right.
those kinds of masculine qualities. And so that's how I've defined it for myself. And it's an important aspect of life. I mean, we have to move forward, we have to take action, we have to get results sometimes, those kinds of things. But then on the feminine side, the idea of let's be open, let's be receptive, let's enjoy the journey a little more. I would might call that a little bit more of the feminine side of things. So having both of those, I think, is important.
Right. And Steve, in your past, have you ever been around someone who is more like the John Wayne, the rugged individualist type? Have you ever had a coach or a relative or someone that kind of had that more stereotyped role, that macho figure?
I had a high school football coach who definitely was along the lines of being a rugged individualist, but he did it in a way which was, he definitely honored the people he was coaching. And so I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot about achieving things and succeeding and hard work and work ethic and those kinds of things, which I think are important aspects of life. So I think he, even though his tendency was more towards that side, he also was able to do it in a way that was also caring and loving at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's interesting when we look at different coaches and their styles, and I've never really understood the tear someone down and build them back up kind of mentality. I always like, taking the strengths or the skills that a person has and building on that. So
absolutely, and from a psychology standpoint, we're finding more and more that that's the way to do it. That's the way to build people up, is to focus on strengths, focus on positive aspects, and highlight those, right? Rather than just, I remember, growing up and you're in school and the teacher would, you get your paper back and all they would do is mark all the wrong things, right? And tell you all the things that are wrong about it, rather than, what's positive about this,
right?
And we're learning,
yeah,
as a society, as a human species.
Right. So then how does your definition of masculinity differ from your father's, and what beliefs would you keep and what would you change?
Well, I can't say that I know exactly what he believed about masculinity, but I will say that what I observed in him is that there was a part of him that struggled with this idea, and a lot of us do in society today, is that we place our self-worth or self-value on what we think is supposed to be masculine tendencies. So in other words, if in the masculine side of things, we're supposed to be a provider, or we're supposed to earn income. And if for some reason that's not, let's say, working out too well, or we're struggling in that area, then we see it as something that is detrimental to our own value as a human being. And so, that's one of the things that I've worked on in myself and tried to overcome, is to not place my worth on something like that. So, and I think, but then he also had some of the other things that he did have was he had a strong sense of honesty and fairness. And I picked that up from him, and I've tried to emulate that and try to integrate those qualities within me as well.
Yeah, that's nice. I think I feel the same way about my dad, as far as the honesty and the integrity. When my dad was growing up, if you shook hands with someone and you gave your word, that was it. You gave your word,
Right.
you know? And so I like that. I like those qualities as well. And what kind of work did your dad do?
He was a truck driver.
Truck driver.
For many
so-
years, yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're also right about that. It seems like men, their profession really defines them in a lot of ways. And I'm sure for women as well, but I think it's been more so that a man has always had this high bar of, you have to be successful and you have to continue to be successful and you have to, continue meeting those high bars. And it's like, God, men are human. You can't be the top salesman every year forever.
Right.
So I always kind of questioned that. I was like, well, gosh, do a good job, work as hard as you can, be a good person. But anyway, okay. How has being more emotionally open helped you in your life, or has it?
Oh, it has tremendously helped me. Well, first of all, I would say probably 15 years ago and more, I was not very emotionally open. I was very closed, didn't know how to speak about emotions, didn't understand what emotions meant in many ways. And I've had to learn through kind of trial and error, just like we all have to do, to be more open, to take more risks in terms of emotional openness and to be more vulnerable and those kinds of things. And the more I've done that, the more it's improved every relationship in my life, the more it's improved my work, my play, everything that I do in a sense. So it's highly valuable in my eyes.
That's interesting, again, because I think that, a couple generations ago for men, it was seen to be vulnerable, to express their emotions. Again, it was kind of that weakness thing. And it's nice to hear you say that, no, actually it helps to integrate you and it helps you communicate better and have better relationships. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's interesting. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered choosing a career?
Well, the career that I have right now, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and this career was actually easy for me to choose. I really felt a calling in it many years ago, and I was committed to doing it from the beginning. And so for me, it was very easy because I really wanted to help people grow, and I wanted to help people feel better about who they are and love themselves and love each other. So I've been committed to this since day one, since I made the decision, which was probably 13 years ago, something like that. So along those lines, it hasn't been that difficult. Now, in terms of what I mentioned before about, the idea of earning income, about being successful, and so I've still struggled a little bit with that in terms of, in the past at least, making it work and so forth. But things are great now, so I'm very excited and very happy about how things are going.
That's neat that you saw it as a calling. And you have a daughter, right?
I do, 6-year-old daughter.
6-year-old?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought she was a little older. So what is she? What are the things that you see in her that you think she might want to develop as she grows older?
Well, first of all, I am learning so much about being a parent. I thought I knew a lot about parenting right until I had my own daughter, and now I'm learning a lot. And what I've learned from her mostly is the idea of just being spontaneous and playing and being in the moment. And it's so incredible to see her do that. One of the things I love about her is that she'll create something without any resistance, without any doubts, without any worries. She just creates it and like, okay, I'm done with that. Okay, next thing, let's go. Create it, okay, done with that, let's go on to the next thing. And I look at that and I go, now why can't we be that way?
Yeah.
As adults. Why can't we say, let's create this thing, have fun with it, okay, now let's move on to the next thing,
Right.
We have to sit here and worry about it and doubt ourselves and, so I'm learning a lot from her.
What kind of field, do you have any idea what you could see her doing when she gets older?
Well, right now, it seems like she's definitely going to be in the arts kinds of field. She loves drama, she loves acting,
Yeah.
she loves artistic kinds of things. So I'm guessing she's going to be in that field or in that area in some kind of way.
Or that's going to be a strong part of her personality.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Steve, thanks so much for being with us.
You're
It's
welcome.
been a pleasure. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you, really.
Okay. All right, folks, stay right with us and we will be back with our next guest. Babe, thanks so much for being with us here today. I really appreciate your being a part of the show. All right, we'll jump right into the questions. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but why do you think society seems to be okay with girls climbing trees and playing sports and maybe having more masculine energy, but not so much for boys wanting to take ballet or be a secretary or kind of more of that feminine energy?
That was the case, and I'm sure it still is. I think it's probably less so. There is something more okay with a girl being a tomboy than a boy being a sissy, if we can use that term.
Tina girl.
Okay, but when I grew up, it was a sissy. So, and little boys did not want to be sissies. So, and then I think they were pushed not to do that. Society, at least in the U.S., many parts of the U.S. has changed. It's a bit more acceptable now. But I think that's where it all started, and that's the main crux of it, is that a boy didn't want to be a sissy, but it was okay for a girl to be a tomboy.
Yeah, that's interesting. And do you think that that's changed? Do you think some of it is cultural, that some cultures are just really more strict on their role definitions, or I don't know, do you think it's further than that?
I think some cultures are more strict about it, and I think times were in the past when division of labor was important and certain gender roles were important, and they still are. But when you had division of labor concerns, you had to make sure people were doing their job, and if some person, male or female, wasn't doing what was expected of them, who was carrying their weight? So I think that in the modern days we have less of that, at least in the Western cultures we may have less of that, but it's a little bit less of an issue than it once was, I hope.
Yeah, okay. So then how do you define masculinity so that it works for you?
I've struggled with that for years, and so I think traditionally in Western cultures, masculinity is defined as gaining honor through leadership and by providing for your family and friends. That's changed to some degree. It's still important, but it doesn't have to be just the male that does that.
Right, right.
I think that as a child growing up, I was fatherless for the most part. So I was always, and I think even for boys that have fathers, the male role that they are learning is taught to them from women, from their mothers, their sisters, their teachers. They're mostly women, especially at an early age in elementary school. So they're learning what the women expect a man to be, and so you're trying to piece that together with what you're seeing yourself in movies, seeing John Wayne on the cinema screen.
Sure.
Different things where you see strong male figures being depicted, and as a young boy or young man, you're trying to figure out, is that the way you act? Is that the way I need to be a good, strong male figure? Over time, you work that out. Sometimes it takes longer. I think I'm still working on it, but I think it's good to keep working on it.
Right.
So that you figure out it's important to figure out what's important to you, as opposed to what society is putting on you.
Right.
And understanding what society is saying, but then figuring out where you fit into that. Do you fit comfortably into that traditional role, or do you want to create your own space in there?
Right, right. Now, you grew up in Ohio, so talk about some of the things that you felt were masculine, and then how you kind of adjusted that as you got older.
Men had to hunt and fish and fix things and build things and work on cars, and that was important. And so it seemed to be important. So as a young boy, I was looking to learn those things.
Right.
And looking for people to help teach me those things. You can't just learn them out of books, and there wasn't the internet then. So was looking for male figures, relatives, neighbors, teachers that would show me and teach me how to hunt and fish and hike and backpack, camp, all those things. I experienced them and I enjoyed them, but I found that over time that you don't have to do that to be a man.
Okay.
Some men do that, some don't.
Right.
So you figure out, are you doing it because you like it? Or are you doing it because you think it's expected of you to fit a certain role?
Right. I think that's really nice how you kind of grew into that, and you're still evolving. How has being more emotionally open helped you in your life, or has it?
I think it has, and I wasn't always this way. I think at times you want people to understand you and why you're reacting a certain way, why maybe something happens and you close up with your body language. Something happens and you open up to it. And so you convey your feelings that way, but not everybody picks up on that, on your body language and what you may be expressing. So then you learn that you have to express them through your actions and through your words. And so I've learned that I don't care what people think. I care that they understand me.
Right.
If they don't like me because I think a certain way or because I feel a certain way, that's their prerogative.
Right.
But if I don't let them see what that is, if I don't let them understand how I feel or what my view is on something, then they're gonna not really understand me.
Right.
So I think it is important.
Yeah, again, it sounds like you have high emotional intelligence, and that being authentic, being comfortable in your skin, that's something that you've grown into, and that's who you want to present yourself as, which is, of course, one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to you. But anyway, the authenticity, I think, really comes across. What are some of the challenges that you've faced choosing a career?
A lot of changes. I thought in junior high I would do one thing. In high school I thought I would do 2 or 3 different things. In college I changed majors a couple of times. And my career changed probably 5 or 6 times before I finally found what I loved, and I just fell into it. And I think that it's important to not get stuck in one thing, or to think I got my degree in this, or I studied this I apprenticed in this area, so I have to keep doing it.
Right.
Or I got a college degree in this area, so I have to do it. No, you don't.
Right.
You can change. There are other ways to learn new things, to develop new abilities, and so keep searching for what it is that you love. Because the old adage of find what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, I think is important.
I love that.
And I found what I loved, and I didn't work for 30 years. I enjoyed life because I enjoyed what I was doing.
And what was that? What was your love, your career love?
In computer science. And so I took classes in that because they were requirements. Took classes in that in college, and I always enjoyed them, but I didn't go with it because it was a requirement. I was required to take it as part of the degree program I was in. And it wasn't until later on that it finally hit me, oh wow, maybe I should be doing this. I really enjoy it, I'm really good at it. Why don't I do this for a living instead of something else? And I did, and it worked out.
Right, right. Okay, to wrap up then, how do you feel about men in fields that are not necessarily viewed as male professions, like nurses, hairstylists, professional dancers, flight attendants?
I think it's fine. I think it's good. When in 1970, 71 time frame, I worked in a hospital. It was a summer job, putting myself through college. And if you looked at back then, nurses, there were no male nurses or orderlies. There was no such thing. You were either a female RN or a female LPN or a male doctor. There weren't very many women doctors.
Right.
So you had these people were definitely in their roles. Now that's not the case. You have as many female doctors as male, or maybe close to it. You have male nurses and orderlies. And I think it's good because sometimes a man maybe wants to talk to a man about something in a hospital, or as a doctor as opposed to a woman, because that's important to them. It may not be something that everybody needs to do, but if that is important to you as an individual, then that opportunity should be made available to you. So if I want to talk to a male nurse, I should have that ability. Same with somebody working in an airline. So I have no problem with that. I think it's great. I think it's great.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, babe, thanks so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. Well, that concludes our program for today. I'd like to thank our guests, Steve, Franco, and Ray, for being with us. And more importantly, I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. I hope you found the program to be interesting and thought-provoking. And if you liked the show, I'd love to hear from you. And in closing, I'd just like to say, whether you're male or female, whether you're tomboy or teen girl, follow your passions. Bye now.